So excited that we get to end the conference on a high note, having Governor Ginaforte with us. And we're very pleased and proud to enjoy such a strong relationship with the governor and his cabinet and his administration. And we look forward to continuing our collaboration through the rest of his term and hopefully into another term. And as we close out the 24th Annual Business Days at the Capitol, we would like to give a warm welcome to Governor Ginaforte to give the last word of our conference, along with Todd.
Thank you.
This is your show, isn't it, Todd?
No, I think you just took it away from me, but that's okay. We'll let you have it. Welcome and thank you. Nancy noted that this great relationship we have with not just you, but your entire administration. Last night you attended the reception for a little while. It was a pretty raucous crowd, and I know you didn't get a chance to see everybody, but we appreciate the great support you give to the business community and working with us and giving us an opportunity to have some time like this. And so let's talk get into some of the specifics here. And 2023 was a pretty big year in the business recruitment. And I know that you've made this a big priority of trying to recruit the right kind of businesses to Montana that can help lift the overall economy of the state. We saw some big relocations in Butte and Lewistown, and I think you had an announcement recently, maybe within like the last 24 or 48 hours. Can you talk a little bit about some of those relocations and some of your efforts, and what do you see kind of going forward?
Yeah, so Montana's open for business. We changed the laws, particularly the regulations, to make it easier, more favorable for business. We lowered the tax burden, and then I want to give a shout out to the team at the Department of Commerce, Frederick, and that whole squad over there. We can just knock on a door in California and say, "You want to come back to America?" And it's appealing to the right businesses. So, and it's been encouraging. I think the first big win, I saw John Suh last night, but Hyundai deciding to put their research and development in Bozeman, DeVell, manufactured housing going to Butte. Will be 450 jobs there in Butte, large installation. The Lewistown, Vacom, this is a very interesting German company, $80 million investment, be 500 jobs over the next 5 years or so. And then just yesterday, we announced Brextel will be investing $125 million in Glendive, 350 jobs. They'll be manufacturing ammunition there and building a primer plant, which is going to be a huge deal. And I just am so thankful. Montana's a great product to sell. I ran on a really simple platform, which is more good-paying jobs and protect our way of life. We now have about 150 companies in the business pipeline and we're not going to win every at-bat, but I'd love to have your help in soliciting more. The Department of Commerce created a program called the Red Carpet Program. This is really simple. When we have somebody, entrepreneur, business person who's interested in maybe investing in Montana, we engage with them, the business attraction team does. We get their requirements, and then we structure a 2-day visit around their requirements. Could be meet a commercial real estate agent, could be talk to entrepreneurs in their industry, could be talking with the university about workforce, and then we structure a 2-day visit specifically for that business. And we're doing, 5 to 8 of these red carpet visits each month. And we don't win every at-bat, but the odds are in our favor. And we'll have another one tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, and it's really exciting when you think that, this recruitment and this relocation isn't just into the western part of the state, right? I mean, Lewistown and Glendive are two good examples of rural Montana that appreciate growth. And so the work that you're doing to encourage companies to look around the state, not just look at the western part of the state, is important.
Yeah, and a lot of states, when they do business attraction, they hand out tax breaks, one-time things. But in my mind, the challenge with that is you got to take it from somebody to give it to somebody else. And I think we should have a level playing field. I'd rather have a lower tax structure for all businesses that choose to locate here. And so people ask me, well, how do you convince them to come if you're not handing out tax breaks? And it's very simple. What we offer is quality of life for the employees and a Montana work ethic that won't quit. And if those are appealing to you, then they're probably the right company that should come here.
So let's talk about your efforts on income tax. You've made this a priority. It's a priority that is based upon experience, and as you look around the rest of the country and we see other states also lowering their income tax rates, can you talk a little bit about where you see your priorities as you look ahead and where this income tax issue falls for you?
Sure. So I think people should be able to keep more of what they earn. I mean, it's not a really complicated thing. When I came into office, Montana's income tax rate that most people pay was uncompetitive. It was one of the highest ones in the Rocky Mountain region. It was 6.9%, effective January 1 through the great work we did with the legislature by keeping state spending close to flat. We were able to use our economic growth to buy down the income tax rate. So we took a first step from 6.9 to 6.5, and then in 2023 we further reduced it to 5.9%. So we've been able to come down a full percentage point, and this is the rate that most Montanans pay. Once you get to $20,000 a year in income, you're paying that top rate. We also simplified the code, which again started this January 1. We went from 7 tax brackets to 2 tax brackets. So it's essentially a flat tax. Let me just say, I think we can do more. So as our economy continues to grow and we show fiscal restraint on growing state spending, we're going to apply any surplus we have to further reducing that income tax rate.
Unemployment. We're seeing record low unemployment in Montana. It's a great thing to be able to brag about, but it's also creating a real pinch point for businesses. We hear regularly from businesses that their number one challenge is workforce. And you've done some things to try to promote more career and technical education, get more students into the trades. Can you talk about some of your priorities as you go forward and some of the things that you have accomplished to get folks into the workforce?
Yeah, so there's been a number of things, and as I talk to business owners across the state, I mean, the number one constraint on growth is workforce. So, I mean, I think that there's not a whole lot of discussion. There's not even a number 2. That's it. Where do we find people? Remember back when I came into office, we were still in the middle of the pandemic. We were paying people to not work. So that was step 1. We were the first state in the country to get rid of supplemental unemployment benefits so we could get people back to work. Prior to me coming into office, there had only been 3 months in the prior 50 years where unemployment had been under 3%. We've now had 25 consecutive months at or below 3%. Right, so we are getting people back to work. We have more people working now than ever before. First, we had to remove the incentive not to work. We did that. And then we also we needed more people in the trades. So we changed our apprenticeship ratios. We required in Montana 2 journeymen for every apprentice. So Joe, electrician with his van, couldn't grow his business. So through administrative rule, we changed that. So now in Montana, 1 journeyman is allowed to supervise 2 apprentices. That quadrupled the number of apprenticeship slots. We have more apprentices in the trades today, over 3,000, than we've ever had in the state of Montana. This is going to create brighter outputs. And this, One example I think is really kind of cool. Someone coming out of high school, if they want to work, and they want to work with their hands, they could become an electrical apprentice in Billings, Montana, start at 20 or 25 bucks an hour. Every time they pass a class, they get a raise. And in 4 years, their starting salary is $80,000 a year. Why wouldn't we be encouraging people to do that sort of stuff? So that's been really good. We also instituted for employers that want to invest in their employees, we created something called MTech, which is the Montana Technical Education Credit. And the state will pay now through a tax credit 50% of the tuition for you to send any of your employees to trade school. Up to $3,000 per year per employee, up to $25,000 per year per employer. Again, it's called MTech, M-T-E-C-H. Just talk to your accountant about that. The other thing we did, which was really kind of innovative, is I don't think we expose enough young people to the trades and to, honestly, all industries. So I would encourage you, if you're involved in your local chamber, I would encourage you to take this back with you. Kalispell is really at the head of this. We changed the law in Montana, so now if a local school board decides high school students can spend 2 to 10 hours a week in a work environment and get high school graduation credit for it. So the Kalispell Chamber worked with their members, and we have high school students spending 2 to 10 hours a week in architecture offices, law offices, manufacturing facilities, heavy equipment operators, and it's broadening their horizons instead of them thinking they have to go to MSU for general studies and 6 years later they're working at Starbucks.
Yeah, the Montana Chamber, we've made this focus on educating about the various career opportunities that are out there and encouraging that we need to prepare our kids for life when they graduate high school, regardless of the path that they choose, whether that takes them directly into the workforce or onto higher education. And it's something very important to me too. I have 3 kids, and my 2 boys represent the complete spectrum of education. I've got my oldest son, who this spring will graduate from medical school after having gone through pre-med and medical school on a full ride scholarship, and so he's going to start his rotations, his residency here in June. And then I've got my 17-year-old son, who I'm just dragging him across the finish line in high school, right? So if I can get him to graduate high school, but I'm not worried about either one of them because I think the opportunities exist whether you want to go on to higher education or you go in to the workforce. And I think we as a state need to do a better job of giving the full picture to students of what the opportunities exist out there.
Yeah, and I'd say I'll give a shout out to Conrad. Conrad has been particularly progressive in this area. 40% of their high school grads are now coming out with some kind of certificate. It could be a certified nurse's assistant. Miles City Community College has done a good job. I know Ron's here, but their CNA curriculum is available online to every high school student in the state. And then the students do their practicum at the local senior center or medical clinic. They graduate high school with a CNA certificate. They may still go to MSU for nursing, or they might just go get a job. Right? That's their choice. But we're opening up new horizons for folks.
Yeah. So with this relatively newfound success that Montana has had, where we've got a lot of attention, we've got an economy, we've got a governor that says that the state's open for business, we've got business moving in, it is creating a bit of a challenge on the property tax front, right? We're seeing, fast rising property taxes, particularly in the western part of the state, but throughout the state. You have tackled this issue in trying to find some solutions, and you've recently appointed a property tax task force. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts there?
Sure. Property taxes are too high. We made it a priority this last session to get $1,300 to every Montana homeowner over the next 2 years to kind of compensate for that. That's a short-term, one-time fix. We need to do a permanent fix. So actually today, I'll be signing the executive order establishing this task force. It's a bipartisan group from all sectors, local, state, county government, to really look at what are the permanent solutions. Property taxes are really complicated. And just so you know, some counties have been really good stewards of your tax dollars. Understand, property taxes do not come to the state of Montana. Property taxes pay for local law enforcement, education, parks and rec, whatever else local referendums you might vote for. And like Flathead County's been really good. Their budget this year was down 2% over last year. Other counties, the growth in spending has been far in excess of inflation and population growth. So the root of the problem is local spending. I'm tasking this task force to go off and look at what can we do to bring some sense to tax, because property taxes are too high. We did significantly increase the money available to help people on fixed income so they can pay their taxes. And we did take $120 million of permanent funding to reduce local property taxes. We did that in 2023, but it wasn't enough to kind of constrain the growth.
Sometimes when you hear a governor talk about appointing a task force, there's this sense it's like, well, they're just kind of kicking the problem to a committee, and then the committee will kind of spend some time and nothing will happen of it. But we do have a bit of a track record in seeing some task forces come up with some meaningful solutions to address problems. Can you talk about the housing task force and some of the accomplishments that we saw from that housing task force? And since you have re-upped, if you will, that task force for 2024, can you give some idea of some of the things that you hope that task force tackles going forward?
Sure. So I would say affordability and attainability of housing is probably the number one issue facing working Montana families. That's why we set up the task force. Thanks to Director Dorrington, Chris Dorrington at DEQ, he chaired it. But we had, again, county commissioners, mayors, state officials, nonprofits. Todd, you served on it. It was really good. And they met in August. They gave me their first report in October, second report in December. And we kind of ran the table. And I point to, we've been getting national recognition for this. I think we're ahead of all the other states in the country. The Atlantic publication, which is not the most conservative publication, they ran an article last summer. The title was "The Anti-California, How the Miracle Occurred in Montana," talking about the results of the task force. And we took the recommendations from the task force, then worked with the legislature, and literally we ran the table. We created funding to pay for infrastructure for workforce housing. We got rid of exclusionary zoning. We expanded the workforce, and recognizing that our housing problem was primarily a supply problem. We had, with the show Yellowstone, everybody and their brother was moving here, and it was driving up prices, and we had to increase supply. So that's where we focused. It was interesting, recently I saw a report come out of Missoula showing that since we had implemented these measures, the vacancy rate on apartments in the last year have gone from just over 1% in Missoula to just over 6%. And rents have come down. I was talking to a landlord in Bozeman who has hundreds of units in Bozeman, and he told me in the last 6 to 8 months, the average rental price for his units has come down 20%. So I just want to say, I think it's working. The basic philosophy here was we were going to use the free market to incent increased supply. And we're going to get regulatory barriers out of the way so builders can get permits faster. and that's what we did.
So we're covering a big chunk of what the Montana Chamber and the business community has identified as an important part of what we do as an organization, which is focusing on four main pillars of our strategic plan. We're talking business climate, which includes taxes. We're talking workforce development. I'd like to ask you about infrastructure, which is is the third of our four pillars. And businesses that we talk about the importance of wastewater and roads and bridges and infrastructure that also includes access to high-speed broadband and internet. Can you talk about some of their wins in the infrastructure arena?
Yeah, again, going back to 2021, when we got our budget finalized, we grew, after funding all essential services and including the statutory required increases for like cost of living increases for employees and that kind of stuff, our budget in 2021 for the biennium grew state spending by less than 1%. So it was very fiscally conservative. And what that meant coming into 2023 was we had a large surplus. In fact, it was over a $2 billion surplus going into 2023. The challenge was most of that was one-time money. It was not recurring money. So infrastructure is an ideal way to use one-time money, because the worst thing we could have done with that surplus is go plant a bunch of acorns that grow big oak trees that we have to keep watering and fertilizing. So we prioritized infrastructure. We put $309 million into broadband. Those bids we're just soliciting now. This was on top of the $260 million we put into infrastructure, in internet infrastructure previously. We put over $200 million into water and sewer to help communities upgrade their systems. Again, a good investment of one-time money. And we put $200 million into roads and bridges, and we structured it in such a way so in many cases we can get a 9-to-1 match out of the feds. So the roads and bridges money should give us between $1.5 and $2 billion going into roads and bridges. I think that was a good stewardship of those funds. We did the tax rebates, rate reductions first. We saved for a rainy day, but then we fixed what was broken using the one-time money. And wherever we could leverage federal dollars, we did.
Yeah, great. So we'll touch on entrepreneurship. As a entrepreneur yourself, this is something that you can speak very passionately about. You're a big supporter of the future and what you see the future that holds for Montana as an entrepreneurial state. But you have to have ran into some instances when you were in business and you were trying to start your business, the surrounded regulations and some of those sort of things may have shaped how you view government and the ways government can stand in the way of entrepreneurs trying to grow the economy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a very basic level, government's responsibility as it comes to regs is, number one, protect public safety, protect the environment. But it's like we've been remodeling this house for 50 years, and if you've ever done any remodeling, you know, if you've been in an older home, you go into it and there's shag carpet in the living room, and then somebody put linoleum over it, and then they put a hardwood floor on top of that, and it's just bad. So on my second day in office, I signed an executive order for red tape relief, and I'm just so thrilled with the work that Lieutenant Governor Juris has done. I mean, she practiced law for 40 years. She knows where all the friction is between small business and farmers and the state government. We've now gone through every line of every reg in every agency, and in the 2023 session, we introduced almost 200 bills that were exclusively red tape relief, just to streamline. Again, we have an obligation to protect the environment, protect public safety, but we had layers and layers of stuff, so we peeled that back. I think in the end, I signed over 90% of those bills into law, and they basically just peeled stuff back really just to simplify and modernize the code. The next frontier in red tape relief, and this is kind of interesting, everybody's talking about AI these days. We found a perfect application. It turns out we took all the state regs and we put them into a linguistic model and have it analyze the educational level required to read and understand the regs. It turns out a high school diploma is not enough. A college degree is not enough. A master's degree is not enough. A PhD is not enough. To understand and implement Montana regs, you need a PhD plus postdoctoral work at least 20 years. So imagine, and we're doing this experiment now, putting a set of regs into ChatGPT for business and telling it to rewrite it at a high school level. We'll probably still need to edit it when it comes out to make sure it's accurate, but our goal is to have a Main Street business owner read the regs and know what he has to do and what he or she doesn't have to do.
Great stuff. And so I've got one last question I want to ask, and it's based upon a conversation that we were having at our table, and how you have been encouraging the directors of your agencies to look at their jobs and their roles in more of a customer service oriented way. And I think you've got some interesting insights. You shared some of that with us at the table, which I think is just a completely different way to look at the way regulators and those that work on permits operate today versus the way they used to.
Yeah, and let me just say, I have been incredibly impressed with the people we have working in the state agencies. But it's sort of like we put the people on the football field and we hadn't told them where the end zone was. It's really hard to score points. And we've just been really clear. We said our goal is to serve the people of Montana. So this is kind of a new concept in state government, like this concept of customer service. And I'll use DEQ as an example because they've done an exceptional job of changing the entire culture. I used to, when I was running for governor, I referred to DEQ as the Project Prevention Department. And they were focused internally, and they were really good at what they did. But because they were focused internally, when you went to them with a permit application, they would noodle on it for a while, and they'd say, "So sorry, you didn't get it right, try again." That's not good customer service. So Chris Dorrington, Director Dorrington, implemented a policy where every single employee at DEQ now does 10 outbound touches, calls, every month. It's 5,000 to 7,000 outbound touches every month. And it's changed the perspective, and the employees, their job is still to ensure our environment is protected. We haven't compromised any of the rules, but we're not playing hide the prize anymore. We had a situation recently with a mine where they put in their permit application for an expansion, and they got it on the first application without any delinquency notices, without the back and forth. It's because we were proactively engaged with them through the permit application so they could dot every I and cross every T on the first go. It saved us time and money, and it saved the mine time and money. So this is just a new way of doing business.
Well, again, we can't thank you enough for joining us here today. And one of the remarkable things about Montana, and particularly about you, is the open door policy that you have, right? You're a very accessible governor. You're very open to what the business community and voters in general have to say. And we want to thank you for continuing that sort of an open door and openness that you have to us in general. And so on behalf of the business community, thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work that you do on behalf to make Montana open for business and to grow our economy.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. And I just want to say, serving this great state's the greatest honor of my life, and it's really a privilege. And thank you for what you do. We wouldn't have an economy without the people in this room. So it's not government that creates jobs, it's all of you. Thanks for being here.
off the stage before the applause ends.
Thank you so much, Governor. We always appreciate you taking the time to be with us and your positive message of inclusion. All right, we are wrapping up. One last housekeeping. If everybody could leave their lanyards on the table so that we can reuse them next year. And please travel home safely. Next year, our Business Days at the Capitol is January 6th, so put it on your calendars now. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Travel safely home. God bless.